Welcome to another TERF Talk Down Under. I'm Stassja and this is Ange. Hi, Ange.
Hi, Stas. How are you?
Good. It's been a good week for TERF news here in Australia. We've finally had two detransitioners go public. First, Ollie Davis. He had a great piece in the Weekend Australia newspaper. Front page, printed, amazing. And then yesterday, I can't pronounce her surname, but her first name's Jay. And look, she's been through hell. 3 sessions with the psychiatrist. First session, he referred her for testosterone. The second session, he approved her for a double mastectomy. The third session, he approved her for a hysterectomy. Absolutely outrageous.
At the age of 19?
Yep. Exactly. Like, so young. She's a lesbian. The initial referral letter, I think from her GP to this psychiatrist, or maybe it was an endocrinologist, I can't remember, said this young woman needs extensive psychotherapy.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist has just completely ignored that and just said, oh, there's no contraindication as to why this woman shouldn't be given these treatments.
And what part of his defence was that she had refused treatment for some of her other issues.
Anxiety,
and really wanted the gender affirmation. Now, that in itself is a red flag.
Yeah. So she's suing him, suing a psychiatrist. All power to her. I sincerely hope that she wins. And I hope she knows how important what she's doing is. Like, this is massive. I imagine she's probably quite overwhelmed at the moment. But, you know, she's doing the right thing and she's very brave.
Yeah, both her and Oliver. And yeah, it was you and a few others who said, you know, what's going to change things in Australia? And you've been quite outspoken about believing it would be detransitioners' stories.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the beginning of, you know, the lack of the one-sidedness and the no platforming of debate.
Well, interestingly, yesterday a woman in our network was contacted by an ABC journalist.
Wow.
Asking about detransitioners. I haven't checked the ABC website today, but I'll have to do that to see if they've actually done some balanced reporting for once on these issues.
Not holding my breath.
Yeah. But, you know, both of those detransitioners, Ollie, his story is he's a bisexual man, and he got pressured into it by people around him because he was slightly effeminate, like feminine things, people kept saying to him, oh, you must be trans. And that happened to him as an adult.
Yeah.
So both of them were adults. So if it's happening to adults, of course it's happening to children and teenagers.
Well, our friend Antifa, she's had the same thing, you know, being accused of being trans because she's a gender non-conforming lesbian. You know, she's fortunate that she has self-awareness and knows exactly who she is. But she feels pressured when meeting new people to sort of, you know, not come out as a lesbian and to just let people make assumptions about her.
Sorry, who's that?
Antifa.
I don't know Antifa.
You do know Antifa. My bodyguard at the International Women's Day rally.
Tell me later.
Yeah.
I think
Antifa, how you going?
So that was really good. And look, Jay's story, when I checked the Age website yesterday morning, was trending as the #2 most read story of the day. And even today, I've gone back and had a look, and it's still at number 9 on the most read stories. So, look, that's like a big breakthrough for us here in Australia.
It is.
And then the second huge breakthrough we had yesterday, Wednesday, was Julie Cross, a journalist, has done a piece on ACON, and she's spoke with Kit Kowalski. I've spoken with Kit. I know that they were on the phone for like 2.5 hours with Kit trying to, map it all out for her.
Because it's deliberately confusing so that people can't follow the trail.
Yeah. So that was huge. I was really hoping that right-wing media were going to pick up on it and really slam the ABC, and they haven't yet, which is a bit disappointing. And then later in the day, a second article popped up from Julie Cross, and it was very focused on what the ABC has been doing to win points for ACON's Australian Workplace Equality Index scam. For those that don't know, this the Australian Workplace Equality Index has been imported directly from Stonewall, UK, and we know that it's it's been closed down in disgrace. Well, I don't know if it's been closed down, but a lot of government departments have dropped out of it now over in the UK. The BBC has dropped out of it. So what was interesting, in that second story, was Julie pointed out that the ABC have won points for editorial decisions that favour LGB, TQ plus,
and they get punished. They get points taken away if their editorial decisions are based, any conceivable way as anti-trans, which could be pro-women, pro-safeguarding. But if it's perceived as anti-trans, they actually lose points.
And they also won an award for best external media campaign with their whole queer ABC. So they've got a whole department devoted to promoting this propaganda. Of course it's influencing their editorial decisions.
Yeah, and what AWEI does is it goes into workplaces, including the ABC itself, and it indoctrinates people, and it warns them that they have to be pro-trans. It puts them on notice.
Yeah, just the scale of this scandal. I'm surprised that other media outlets can't.
And it's not just the ABC. It's the health department, which we saw this morning, where ACT Health came out and called women cervix, anyone with a cervix. It's the police. And we've seen a lot of that in the UK, that ideological indoctrination, that comes straight out of these workplace schemes and these points allocations, because, the ABC's on the top of the leadership board. Victoria Police is about down here, and it's a scale. And the media companies are also, vying for position on these boards, because they get donations and they get publicity from, where they are on this board and how inclusive they're appearing to be.
Also universities.
Yeah.
Really disturbing. And law firms. A lot of law firms are signed up to this.
Yeah.
So, most marginalised, most oppressed, they have all the fucking power at the moment.
Did you see 60 Minutes, which is, one of our, a little bit mainstream, but one of our major investigative news programs is doing a feature story on our mate Danny Laidley, because they have a book coming out. So in a time where there's detransitioners, the Tavistock, shutting down because of, malpractice towards children, women, nobody, not one news agency has spoke to women who are directly impacted by self-ID in Victoria. And this is 2 years in. Not one news agency has ever spoken to any of us who have been directly impacted by men in our spaces about how that impacts on us. But they'll do a fluff piece on Danny Laidley, who is a convicted domestic violence perpetrator. They'll do a piece on him.
That's already got off.
Pardon?
I thought he went free. I didn't think he was convicted.
Oh, I think he had to do a diversion order or something like that. Yeah, so you got me on a technicality. So he was charged.
Yeah.
So, he's still a perpetrator in the eyes of the law. So, they'll do a fluff piece on him because they're trying to hide all the other stuff, all the really important stuff that's of the public interest.
Or they just don't know. It might be that they just don't know. They don't realise the impact this is having on ordinary women.
They know. I think, TERF Twitter is vocal enough, particularly over the Kath Deeves issue. The whole country was talking about women's sports. Mm. And I think they know. I think because of their involvement with ACON, they're being willfully ignorant and pretending that they don't know.
Mm. Well, speaking of TERF Twitter, Edie Wyatt.
Oh, I know.
Great. Look, she writes great pieces for the Spectator on these issues, and she's just been booted off Twitter for defending lesbians, saying men can't be lesbians. What you're promoting is rape culture. That's it. Suspended.
Permabanned. I had a weird, algorithm in my Twitter this week, and I thought that was my time up.
Yeah.
But it'll do that. It'll just one day you're tweeting as normal and you don't even have to say anything controversial, and all of a sudden your Twitter's gone. There's no right of reply. There's no chance to appeal. You are gone. But she did do a really good video talking about her Twitter banning. If you want to look up Edie Wyatt on YouTube. And during the week, she also wrote a really, really good article because, of course, all the news agencies were running with a story that a woman was complaining that her transgender daughter, or a boy a teenage boy who identifies as transgender, wasn't admitted at a place in a female-only school that is for children who are struggling in the mainstream school system, an expensive private school for children who are struggling in the mainstream. And this woman's all over, the media saying, my daughter is being discriminated against, and they're planning on action against this private school. So Edie wrote a response to that about the importance of girls' schools for, girls' self-esteem and things like that. So you could have a look for that too. We'll put a link in the comments.
What I actually managed to find some US podcaster found a clip of that woman on, must have been Brisbane Channel 10 News or something like that, talking about it. And he did a bit of an analysis, and I'd like just the selfishness of demanding that this boy have access to an all-girls school, Christian-based all-girls school as well. And I don't think she's going to win, because the Federal Sex Discrimination Act still has those clauses for religious schools.
But what might happen is, due to public pressure, and we've seen it before, there's the religious schools in Melbourne that caved and allowed, the opposite sex into their single-sex schools. So, because of the pressure from the media, so hopefully these people stick to their guns, because it's very important, particularly for vulnerable kids who aren't comfortable in the mainstream system.
Just so selfish.
It is. And parents, they're so obvious that the parents are making it about themselves, that they're, either Munchausen's parents or just outright narcissists.
Yeah. All right. In other news, there was a second story in the Herald Sun about the male sex offender being housed in the women's prison here in Victoria. Jessica Williams from Single Sex Prisons WA was quoted in that story. I think she did a good job. So that getting a second look is promising.
Yeah.
I actually sent those two journalists my Freedom of Information requests. I was surprised they didn't include that, because, that in itself is a scandal. The response that I got saying, "Oh, we're not tracking transgender inmates, what they're just recorded as female." I'm surprised they didn't pick up on that. But anyway, so also regarding that, two lovely women out in rural Victoria went and sat in the car park with signage all over their cars at the Dame Phyllis Frost Correctional Centre for Women. Said they were there for about an hour, and then, you know, some security guard came up and told them they're trespassing. Is that really trespassing? I mean, it's a public car park.
Oh, good on them though. Like, that went all over the world. So yeah. Good on you.
Thank you. Reasons to riot.
Yeah.
And I've been working with Rachel Wong from Women's Forum Australia to get a petition up and running. So that's up. I'll put a link in the description. Please sign it. This is a really important one. We're going to probably leave it running until after the upcoming November state election here in Victoria, and then present it to whoever's sworn in as the new ministers and really pressure them to do something, because this is just outrageous. He's a rapist. He's a rapist.
That's it. And when I've explained to people that who this male perpetrator is that they're putting in the female prison, people are horrified. Even people who are, trans women are women, they're absolutely horrified. And like I've said before, the average person might give lip service to, trans ideology and sort of either, say trans women are women or not get involved. But it's always conditional for most people. And they always say, oh, no, they shouldn't be in women-only crisis services. And they definitely don't believe that intact males should be in women's prisons.
Yeah.
So, talking about these as contemporary issues is a good way to peak trans people, because when they don't realise what they're saying when they're sort of all, wishy-washy about transgenderism. And when you explain to them, remember Sarah Jones, who grabbed that woman in Richmond and tried to rape her and people had to pull him off, they go, yeah, well, they're going to put him in a women's prison. They freak out.
Mm-hmm. I like it's hard to imagine anyone that thinks that's a good idea.
Someone who hates women.
Yeah. I can imagine there are men out there who would think it's a big funny joke.
Well, the Minister for Corrections needs to be questioned on this, because for him to allow that to happen, he must really hate women.
Apparently Bernie Finn, the disgraced Liberal MP who got kicked out of the Liberal Party, apparently he got up in Parliament in Victoria and did a whole spiel about it. And
wow.
None of the media picked up on it. I haven't seen a recording.
No.
Probably Google it, see if there's a recording. But...
And what happens when politicians in Victoria do speak up for women's rights? All the other politicians walk out.
Yeah, right.
They're under no obligation to sit and listen.
Yeah, I noticed when Senator Chandler speaks in the Senate, it's always like empty.
Yep. Or they talk over each other so that they're deliberately not paying attention to be disrespectful, to deliberately be disrespectful towards her.
Well, look, our guests have arrived, so I'm going to bring them in. Very pleased to have Terri and Tania, who are both founding members of LGB Alliance Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome. Can you see us and hear us?
I can see and hear you too.
We can't see you.
There you are.
Yeah. Hi, Tania.
Hi.
Just wait for Terri. Just need to switch your audio and video on, Terri. Welcome. Hang on, I better give Terri a prompt. See if that fixes it.
Yay.
Hi, Terri.
Hi, how are you both?
Good.
Good, welcome. Good to see you both. Congratulations on starting up LGB Alliance Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Thank you.
Yeah, tell us all about it. How did it come about?
Okay. Well, it happened probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago. a group of us were talking about how everything was, sort of put towards the QT, and LGB were basically consigned to the, the bottom of the heap. So we started talking about starting up an LGB group. I spoke to Kate Harris in the UK, and a few conversations went backwards and forwards, and it just basically started from there. They gave us the okay. And so here we are. We've started up Facebook and Twitter accounts. And we've had a little bit of, nasty feedback, but most of it has been very positive. Would you agree on that, Tania?
Absolutely. We've got a lot of hate followers on Twitter, and that's always nice. And yeah, but actually most of it has been pretty good. I think we've done quite well considering it's fairly new.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has been. It's been great.
See, sorry.
I was going to segue. You go.
A large proportion of my followers on Twitter are lesbians and gay men.
Is that right?
Yeah, a huge proportion, which is great.
Yeah.
We've had a bit of a problem getting the gay men numbers up, but it's growing. We've got a couple of gay guys on the executive team, but yeah, a lot of them are actually hedging towards the QT still at this stage, but we're hoping it'll change.
It just reminded me, there's a, what's his name? Clive. He's a YouTuber. I've forgotten his surname. Clive something. Anyway.
Yeah, awesome.
He's in the UK. He's a gay man. He's made a lot of videos about transgender crimes. But
Simpson.
Clive Simpson, that's it. And now he's started a podcast where he gets on another gay man, Dennis, I can't remember his surname, and they just it's very entertaining. They do a really good job. I don't know, have you seen it?
I think I have, yes. Yeah.
They're old school gays. They've lived through the worst homophobia of recent history through the 80s. And I can relate to them. Anyone over the age of 35 can probably relate to them.
And well over that.
Yeah. and they can look at this through the lens of someone who's having their history erased, basically.
Well, it is. Our history is being transed, and I've just sort of had a bit of an argument on Facebook this morning about someone, talking about Malcolm, being transgender. He wasn't, in his own words, he was a gay male drag queen, and it's just happening too much, far too much.
Yeah. Now, Terri, you've been with me since I first peaked. We met in a group called LGB Australia on Facebook.
That's right. Yeah.
Just dropped the tea, and I was like 2 months peaked at that point, and LGB Australia were nice enough to let me into the group, and it was just this free-for-all. You could say whatever you thought. Everyone was having arguments and bagging out the trans. It was so much fun.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, we can't do that now because we get banned. I've had 12 30-day Facebook bans.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been off it more than on it.
Wow.
I have to be very nice now.
Yeah. And Terri, I remember at some point you saying that you were originally a trans ally.
Yes.
Can you talk about that and how you came to change sides?
Well, I've been an out and proud lesbian for about 45 years now. And I've always supported, trans people. Well, we used to call them cross-dressers back in our day, but we're not allowed to do that any longer. It was probably about the same time you were peaked, Stassja. I started reading, I actually went on to Broadsheet and actually defended trans women, saying, hey, this isn't right. And I'm surprised I wasn't thrown off Broadsheet, but they persisted. But anyway, I started reading a bit more about it, and especially men and women's sports. And I started thinking that wasn't right. And then I read more and more about, what was happening to children being medicalised and mutilated. And I guess it took me about 6 months to totally transition, just reading what was actually going on and how it wasn't widely publicised. It was all flying under the radar, basically, especially the, the surgery and the hormone blockers and all of these sorts of things. And, I've just become a staunch TERF. Yeah. And I am wearing my T-shirt.
Love it. How about you, Tania? Did you have a peak trans moment, or were you always a little bit, oh, this doesn't feel right? Or
no, I think probably I just let it wash over me for a long time. I didn't really take a lot of notice. It was really around the time that I became quite friendly with someone who identified as trans, and I was struggling with some of the things that person was saying that I'm going to be quite tactful. I found it a little bit difficult to understand the logic. And I didn't really agree with some of the things that were being said. And I was quite naive. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if there's another human being on this planet that thinks the same as me. I really didn't think so. I thought I was just being a bit mean. And so I went on Google and I just put something in the search engine. And the first hit was gender critical Reddit.
Oh.
Reddit. And it was, that's a bit of a rabbit hole. And I found my peace, really. I think that was what got me there. I sort of, I tried to be really sensible about it. I didn't want to be on the wrong side of history. So I read some of the stuff on the other side and tried to understand their research that they kept talking about and so on and everything. But it just didn't make any sense to me, and I just didn't agree with it. So I just stuck with what I felt was right.
Yeah, there's so many contradictions in their logic.
Yeah, just doesn't make any sense. Not common sense.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. And we are so woke here in New Zealand. We have, I think, passed every other country in the world as to how totally woke we are, and on the side of the, the supposedly downtrodden and dispossessed. It's, become an absolute farce.
Yeah,
it's certainly in the government departments and things like that. I mean, it's just threaded through everything, through all the policies, and just feeding down into society.
And has any of the legislation redefined homosexuality as same gender attraction? Do you know?
They are talking about. I think isn't it in the police?
Conversion therapy, maybe.
Yeah, they talk about gender identity as being protected, but not sex.
Yes. Yeah.
So we're having to sort of redo that all over again. But recently, I think just late last year, we had the Births, Deaths and Marriages and Relationships Bill redone for the first time in a number of years. And they have basically passed gender identity under a change of birth certificate, driver's license or passport by the signing of a piece of paper. Anyone can go in and identify as the opposite sex. So that's coming into law, I think, next year sometime. So there will be nothing that any of us can do to stop a man in a bush shirt and a beard coming into the ladies' changing rooms or toilets and saying, I have every right to be here, I'm a woman.
That's what we have here in Melbourne.
Oh, you've got that as well there, have you?
Yep, it's been here in Melbourne, and once lockdown was over, because we were like yourselves, we were in lockdown for a couple of years. As soon as lockdown was over, there's this mass a massive amount of trans-identifying people and men insisting on attending women-only services. And stories of men in women-only change rooms, particularly in the inner city where it's very woke and there's a lot of trans-identifying people. And it's not just that the law's been changed, because a lot of these dudes don't even have the birth certificate. It's just that it's out there and people are afraid to say, no, you can't be in here, because there's a culture of fear around being dragged to a tribunal, justifiably.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I've voted twice for Jacinda Ardern, but you know, a lot of us are now politically homeless because 100% of our House, every single MP voted last year for self-ID to be implemented, even though there was a commission and 69% of submissions were against it. We even had transgender people speak up against it, didn't we, Tania?
We saw a lot of those submissions. Yeah. And they were heart-wrenching, some of them. And how anyone can ignore some of those submissions is beyond me.
Well, it was all predetermined. It's just a farce.
For sure. Same as here in Victoria, we didn't even barely have a chance to make submissions. It was just straight through.
Yeah.
What's the pushback? Your Conservative Party is the National Party, yeah?
That's right. And ACT is even more conservative. But they only hold I think they've got about 8% support at the moment. So they're a minor party, but National and ACT usually go together, just like the Labor and Greens usually go together.
Yeah.
National has had an up, they've had a growth in women's supporters, and Labor has had a falling number of women supporters. I wonder why.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah. And so what are the Nationals like? Do they push back? Are they very vocal?
No. They all voted for the self-ID as well. But I think there were 8 members out of their party they were the only ones who didn't vote for the banning of conversion therapy, because they saw the transgender influence there, that they felt that, it shouldn't be totally banned.
Right.
How can anyone have a conversation with the average trans-identifying person, which is usually an autogynephile or a young woman with rapid onset gender dysphoria, and how can anyone have a conversation with them and think that there should be no exploration into the other issues that person holds? Most of these people are obviously mentally challenged by their own admission that they're mentally ill, that they're vulnerable, that they're sensitive, etc. None of this makes sense.
Absolutely. And they're using that mental health problems as part of their identity. They're just adding that on to make it a little more interesting. Well, I feel it is anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
And there is the PM's mantra of be kind.
Yeah.
So no one's allowed to be mean and sort of ask the questions.
Well, it's the opposite of kind, telling a same-sex attracted, 15-year-old girl that she's a man.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what we believe. That's what we believe too. That it's.
Yeah. It's so bad for young LGBs, like so bad. I'm curious if either of you think that you might have got caught up in it and transitioned, or identified as transmasculine, if this stuff had been around when you were going through your adolescence.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
I feel if I was actually born far, like about 15 years ago, I probably, I was a real tomboy, and quite a few of my friends who I've spoken to around my age or a little bit older have all said, gosh, we all could have been in that situation, because you've got, teachers you look up to and listen to, and all sorts of people telling you, that you're probably born in the wrong body. Well, you start there's a strong possibility you start agreeing with that and go down that path. And that worries me about so many, young LGB people.
Because I think I could have quite easily gotten caught up in it. My first year of high school, all the boys from my primary school went to one high school and all the girls went to a different high school. And I can remember me thinking, oh, I should have gone to the other high school with all the boys. I'm in the wrong high school. And even other things like when the girls were getting into makeup and wearing, really girly clothes, like tight-fitting, sexualizing clothes. Like I didn't catch up to them for a good couple of years. I remember the first time I wore like a tight-fitting top, I was so uncomfortable. And I was at a friend's place, and at some point in the night, I just took it off and switched into a baggy t-shirt. And so like all those little things, I can just imagine myself, I could have gotten easily caught up in this shit. Yeah.
Well, I was just reading the other day about how bulimia started just with about, a few girls a number of years ago vomiting after they'd eaten. And within a couple of years, it had swelled to about 30 million girls worldwide. And I think, young people, but young girls especially, are very impressionable. And, I think this is sort of the anorexia or bulimia of this generation, basically.
I remember Princess Diana came out and admitted that she'd had bulimia, and there was a spike in bulimia then with young people trying to get bulimia.
Yeah.
The social contagion aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's the same with celebrity suicides. When there's a celebrity suicide, suicide rate jumps up for the next, couple of weeks or something like that. So, yeah.
Tragic, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. So, what plans? What's on the horizon for LGB Alliance New Zealand? Any projects or ideas that you can share?
They've got some projects. We're still pretty new, but Tania and Hamish have been talking to government departments down in Wellington, sort of seeing how we can, cooperate. And we're actually not part of the discussion at the moment, are we, Tania? But you're trying to ensure that we are, as LGB, part of the future discussions as to, how we can participate and influence and look after LGB people.
Yeah, that's right. The election next year as well. I mean, I think we need to start looking at that as an opportunity for us to get a voice out there, just in the public. That's what I'd like to look at.
Yeah.
Do you expect any legal challenges like what's happened in the UK and in Tasmania? For people trying to say that you're, transphobic?
Oh, hate group.
Oh,
well, we don't hate trans people.
No, none of us do.
They're totally valid, and they're entitled to every single human right. They want more.
Yeah,
they want more than what we have, and this is part of the problem. But they don't have. There are no rights that they don't have, and we're certainly not a hate group. I don't hate anybody. So
no. Here in Australia, our public broadcaster famously apologised for using the words same-sex attracted.
Really?
Have you had instances like that where, it's just been so blatantly homophobic and you've gone, what?
Well, we find the term queer is used an awful lot, and it's sort of is supposed to encompass everybody. I don't like the term queer. I never have. It's got very bad connotations for, generations of men especially, and it's I don't think it should ever be a normalised word, and that's what I fight against. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the conflation of LGB with the rest of that alphabet. I just, it makes me cringe every time I see it. And I feel like they've bastardised the rainbow flag as well. So that doesn't anymore either. I can't think of anything overtly homophobic at this point, but I'm sure there has been. I just can't remember.
Well, we just don't get, we just don't get mentioned. Everything is.
Yeah, we're ignored, yes.
Yeah, everything is gender identity or queer or, trans. It's, homosexuals, the term lesbian never gets mentioned. No. It's sort of a forbidden word now. And I have had friends who have actually been banned or had Facebook bans for mentioning the term dyke.
Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? That Facebook has flagged that word as a slur, but queer is okay. TERF is okay.
Especially when a woman, a lesbian actually uses the term dyke. I've had a number of friends, especially in the States, who have been, had bans for that.
Outrageous, just outrageous.
It really is crazy.
And what about, have either of you ever been accused of being genital fetishists?
Yes, I have. When I've sort of said, I'm same-sex attracted, and said, well, you've got a problem with genitals then, haven't you? I said, well, I certainly will have if it turns out to be a guy. I will have a definite problem.
And what's the LGB scene like over there? Are there still gay bars or lesbian bars? Do they exist? Did they exist in the past?
I was talking to someone about that this morning, actually, and I haven't been in this area very long, but she was saying that it used to be really rocking. It used to be really, really good for lesbians. There was an amazing social life. There was an amazing, there were bars, there were social dances and things like that. There is nothing now. There is nothing now. And the last time I heard of a lesbian bar opening was a number of years ago, and it really didn't last long at all.
It's really sad. Yeah. What a mess.
Oh, it is. I can remember the 80s and 90s being, full of nightclubs and parties and, there was never a transgender person in sight at any of those. And even in the gay marches that I went in the early 80s, gay pride marches, it was all just, a few drag queens, of course. You have to have the, the typical drag queen coming down Queen Street in the marches. And, anything I was part of. I was on the 5th season garden committee, which set up the gardens and raised money for AIDS. There were no transgender people part of that. They've only just come in the last few years. And, tried to banish us.
Yeah, and they've made a mess of it all.
We watched Mardi Gras this year because we're stuck in a hotel room with nothing else to watch, and caught up with a bunch of older lesbians a couple of days later, and we go, oh, did you watch Mardi Gras? And they go, hell no. But we noticed while we were watching it that it was mainly straight people and fetishists. Yeah. No, and there was all this corporate stuff. And the one time where a group of buff blokes in gold hot pants came out, normally it'd be like, oh yeah, more of that. We were like, oh, thank God, some old school, rampant gay men. It was a relief because the rest of the 2.5-hour show was all about the TQ, all of it. And I hadn't watched it for 15 years, but I'm not going to be watching it again either. And it was so corporatized. It's so obvious that this queer washing of the rainbow has a corporate origin. It's blatantly obvious. Terrible.
Yeah, certainly is. And the same here too. I mean, the police aren't allowed in any longer. Nobody in uniforms allowed in, the firefighters. I mean, sure, there were problems in the past with police, but that's mainly changed. And, because some transgender person had a bad experience, all the police, were told, you can't march. And that was a couple of years ago, so.
It's further proof that it's an American ideology, because it fits in, there's the, ACAB, all cops are bastards, Black Lives Matter, and now, the gender ideology, they all kind of go in together and they infiltrate society. And also obviously, being New Zealanders, you're a colonised country, very little regard for the impact of gender ideology on Maori. And unfortunately, a lot of the Maori politicians have been indoctrinated. That must be really disappointing.
It is very disappointing. I'm sort of affiliated with Manawahine Korero.
We love them.
Rexwell, don't you?
Yes, I do. Good old Rexy. And so they feel like they're fighting a losing battle in a lot of ways, because a lot of Maori have bought into this gender ideology, and it has come from the top as well. It is disappointing. I'd like to see more Maori and Pacifica with the alliance. I'd like to see a little more. I'd like them to have a bit more of a voice as well, the LGBs. I think it's important. The Indigenous cultures did not have trans and non-binary. They had, for example, men who acted as women for particular reasons in terms of gender role. But this whole thing is very much a very modern creation.
Excuse me. You just reminded me, I saw a short clip, I think it was by ABC or SBS here in Australia, and it was an Aboriginal man who wanted to transition, and he's gone out to some rural clinic in the middle of the bush somewhere. They have these doctors will come in for 1 day a week, and everyone in the surrounding areas can come and see the doctor, and he came in asking for hormones, and he was granted hormones, and I just thought, this is so sad. This is not what the sister girl phenomenon is about. It was about gender roles. It wasn't about fucking up your body with the wrong hormones. And we know that it reduces your life expectancy if you're doing this to your body. It really broke my heart. Yeah.
It's always younger people perpetuating it too. It's always younger people that are rewriting history.
Well, they have nothing to compare it to, so that's what they've been brought up with, basically. So they know nothing else. I mean, quite a few of them have been horrified when I've sort of told them about, Storme and Marsha and Fred Sargent, all of these people who, were part of Stonewall, and yet all they know about is that the trans women were there, and they started and sustained the riot, which is it's just not true.
All right, well, we better wrap it up there. It's been lovely talking with you both. Thank you so much for coming on, and we're really wishing LGB Alliance Aotearoa New Zealand the best of luck. Looking forward to seeing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah,
we tend to be here for the long haul.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Keep us posted.
Absolutely.
We will. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for your time.
Bye.
See you.
Excellent. Just clicking, done. All right. Well, I'm glad they've set up.
Yeah, our Australian chapter's a little bit quiet, in my opinion.
Well, I was just thinking I'll try and get someone from LGB Alliance Australia on at some point.
I was one of their earliest members. I remember the day they appeared.
Yeah. Look, they did bring out quite an excellent and meticulous submission for the New South Wales proposals. They were very thorough. And I think at the moment they're looking at responding to the Western Australia bill that's coming up. That's a massive, that review of the Equal Opportunity Act WA. It's like 260 pages long. So, you know, for people like us who aren't getting paid, that's a big chunk of time you need to set aside to sit down and go through that those proposals. So
being a public TERF could be a full-time job.
Yeah.
Should be.
Good. All right. What else? Yes, there was a funny story in the Herald Sun about a Melbourne student who identifies as a cat, and apparently the school is supporting her. And then I haven't read it yet, but I think it was Crikey or someone reported that it was a hoax and that the Herald Sun had fallen for a hoax. So I don't know what to think now. But
I wouldn't be surprised. This is how mad it is, that even if it is a hoax, everyone believed it.
Yeah. Oh, mate, it's this funny thing where, like, you don't know what's satire and what's real anymore. Because everything's just like so extreme. It's weird.
But what is real is that, 9, 10, 11-year-old children are being introduced to, like ideas of sexuality and gender identity, and are being told that they can choose to opt into things that they can't possibly comprehend.
Yeah.
Like, I know 10-year-olds that are saying that I'm bisexual, and they're like, 4 years away from their first kiss, for God's sake, hopefully. Like, it's just like younger and younger children are getting sucked in to identifying with things that they may, struggle to identify out of.
Yeah.
It's scary. And so a cat's not that extreme, especially if anyone spent 5 minutes on Twitter with all the disgusting furries and stuff. Ugh.
There was one going around. I think it was like cupcake gender.
No, identifying different ages. Oh, I'm, a toddler. I'm a, 11-year-old. Ugh.
Yeah, that stuff gets a bit creepy. I'd like to give a shout out to the wonderful women at Women's Action Alliance Canberra who went and protested out the front of the ABC up there, I think on the weekend, and actually had, I don't know if it was a staffer or a journalist, come out and take photos of them and say some bullshit about, me and all my colleagues always report the facts fairly and unbiasedly, or some nonsense like that. So well done, Wims.
Yeah, they're runners up for TERF of the Week, because my TERF of the Week was very popular last week. So this week I'd like to allocate TERF of the Week to those 2 TERFs that went out to the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre and protested off their own bat with their car. Yeah, they're TERFs of the Week this week. And speaking of which, there may be a little protest in the works.
Indeed, we've got something coming up. Will we reveal the date?
The date and the city approximately.
So we're going to do it in Melbourne, and it's going to be, what date did I pick? Saturday the 3rd of September. We're going to be protesting against the prison situation here in Victoria. If you would like to come along and join us, please send us an email, terftalkdownunder@gmail.com.
We will be vetting people that contact us. So if you are a TRA and you think you're going to come along and get all the information beforehand and we're going to, you know, turn up and you're going to be there with your loudspeakers, you're wrong.
And if you do, it's going to make you bad. How can you argue that putting a rapist in a women's prison is good? Like, you're just going to look like
the worst of the worst.
Yeah, wrong side of history, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Very excited to see a website has come out. It's for dissident Greens supporters, Greens members. It's called greensdebate.com. And so far the focus has been, well, the Greens Party are saying that there is no debate to be had around LGB rights, women's rights, the transitioning of children. And they're saying, well, actually, there is a debate to be had. So I'm really, really glad that that's happened. You can sign up and get added to their emailing list. I encourage people to do that. I'll put a link in the description.
What was happening is a lot of people were leaving the Greens in disgust, and I do not blame them. And even Linda Gale, who was elected to a position within the Greens and then booted from it for her views, she came out and said, look, please don't leave. Stay and let's, do something about it. So this is an opportunity for those members who want to stay with the Greens for their climate issues, but have, reservations about their anti-women stance, then they can still stay with the Greens.
Yep. I really hope they will get. At the moment, I don't think they have anyone who's public. So I would like to see them get, one or two people to act as spokespeople for their group and take it from there. We'll see what comes from that. But it's a really promising start. Yeah.
Mm.
Now we have TERF of the week.
Mm.
I'm just making this up on the spot. Maybe we need turd of the week.
Yeah.
Turd standing for trans extremist radical dickhead.
Yeah. I saw a few photos of a few of those during the week. Some AGPs out there that made my skin crawl. But yeah, if you have anyone in mind.
Well, this is for the trans and gender diverse staff that work for Coles supermarkets here in Australia, who had a great big whinge about having to hand out little Harry Potter cards. The thing where you spend a certain amount of money, you get a little gift for your kids. They don't want to hand out Harry Potter cards. And I think they're a bunch of turds.
Yeah. And they've been crying about it on Twitter. It's so funny. Yeah, it's just so upset. Oh, I've got to promote JK.
Oh my God.
And yet there were, Coles, this cost of living is through the roof. Coles are putting all their prices up and they're still posting billions of dollars worth of profits on the back of consumers whose incomes have not risen. And instead of taking a stand against their employer for that, they're whinging about handing out Harry Potter merch to kids.
I don't think I even read the whole article, so I don't know all the details. And, what are they going to do? Go on strike over Harry Potter cards? And I just don't envisage Coles supermarket bowing to their demands.
It's so petty. And, 95% of people don't give a crap about this war between trans activists and JK. They're unaware of it. They like Harry Potter. They don't know there's this culture war thing happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and she's still selling. All her merch is in Big W. It's still selling.
Yeah. Good for her.
Yeah.
It's reminded me, there's this new series on Netflix called Sandman.
Oh, yeah.
Based on this comic book series that was written in the 90s, and It's by a pretty woke guy called Neil Gaiman, who's very pro-trans. Graham Linehan has been in Twitter spats with him, and and anyway, one of the characters is non-binary, and but in the comic book, because I read the comic book, in the comic book, this non-binary character is referred to as it and itself, and in the Netflix adaptation, they've had to soften it and use they them pronouns. Mm-hmm. But this non-binary character is just vile, like the most detestable character out of the entire series, which is saying a lot because there are serial killers in the he's just awful, very unlikable, and I'm really surprised Pink News has reported on it a couple of times. And they're praising how wonderful this actor is and how he's completely nailed the character. And it's like, I would have thought they would be up in arms about such a negative portrayal of non-binary. All very funny. And then they released a bonus episode at the 2 weeks after the release of the series. And in this bonus episode, they name Joe Rowling when these two characters are having a conversation. They just mentioned Joe Rowling, and oh my God, trans fans are up in arms. How could they reference J.K. Rowling? It's just ridiculous and very funny.
And it's funny, like this, they get so upset over the most trivial things, and yet women's rights and children's rights are being completely stripped away, and we're devastated and outraged, and we're called petty.
Yeah, it's very topsy-turvy, totalitarian, weird world we're in at the moment.
I was watching a Harry Miller thing before this on trigonometry, and he talks about 20 minutes in about some lessons from history about this ideology and the way that it operates, and I recommend people have a look at that too. It's actually pretty good, and it talks about policing as well, and the modern police force and how they've become the ideological thought police force rather than doing the police stuff that we need them to do, like investigating crime. So I found it very interesting. So have a listen.
He's entertaining to watch and listen to as well, Harry Miller.
He's old school.
Yeah.
All right. I don't we're I'm old and you're a little bit younger, but it'd be really nice to have some really young people on the show.
Yeah. Look.
So if you're a young, I know we understand that everyone's worried about their anonymity, but if you're a young, person, particularly a same-sex attracted person who's experienced discrimination for being same-sex attracted, or is feeling pressured to be trans or whatever, and you want to come and talk to us, get in touch. Because we know, we've got, people at 18, 19 following us on here. We'd like your age group to feel represented too. So, get in touch with us.
Yep. I'd like to extend that invitation. If you've got a good story, a story that you would like to get out there, if you've been treated badly in the workplace because of your views, if you've had to compete against a male in community sports, get in touch. Our email address is in the description. And thank you to all our viewers. I don't think we say it enough, but we really appreciate you. I don't think we knew what we were getting into when we started this show, but it's grown, and I feel, I'm sure you do too, Ange, a sort of sense of responsibility now that we have people that are watching and tuning in every week. So thank you so much for keeping us going and for your support.
Yeah.
And we'll wrap it up there. So please like, share, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We will see you next week. Bye.
See you, everyone.